Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. On the High Strangeness Factor, we explore all aspects of the paranormal with a special emphasis on the parallels and patterns that seem to link different types of unexplained phenomena. And I would like to, Bill Kuselis, welcome back to the High Strangeness Factor.
Hi, Steve.
And I want to remind everybody that you're on a little over a month ago on with Andy Mercer, my regular co-host, and you are a longtime independent paranormal researcher, and you are in the final stages of completing your PhD in psychology.
Yes, sir. We're coming right down the wire. I should have it wrapped up in early January.
So you are inches away. You are just a couple breaths away from having that. And how many years have you been working on that?
I decided to go back to school, Steve, about 10 and a half years ago. And I've taken one class per quarter since then. So the dissertation has been a 2.5-year process. I've been a doctoral student now for going on 6 years.
That's a little more. I mean, I'm trying to write a book and just trying to sit down at the computer every once in a while, and do it is a challenge. But that's really going to be an amazing accomplishment. Now, you have approached now we're going to be talking a lot about the Mothman phenomena and John Keel and the paranormal in general. And you have been looking at this through kind of a psychological viewpoint, and that's one of your reasons for pursuing this the way you have.
It is, Steve, and I know we talked about this, 5 or 6 weeks ago at length on the show that you and I did at that point in time. And as I mentioned then, the whole Mothman phenomenon just really grabbed me many, many years ago, and I've studied it ever since then. Prior to my doctoral studies, I was really involved with looking at different aspects of it from different angles. And then with my studies with psychology, coupling that with what I've experienced in terms of the investigations that we've done, the research I've done, taking a look at things through the entire psychological lens, it's just been absolutely fascinating. It really has.
And there's something interesting you wrote in your. You have a little intro here. That you're not an experiencer. Now I've had a couple of experiences. I mean, I'm basically not an experiencer either, but you say that your intuition and perceptive faculties have increased the more you immerse yourself in the phenomena. Do you mean studying or going out in the field and so forth?
Well, a little bit of both of that, Steve. I would say a lot of it. What the studying has done for me has helped me to think more analytically than I ever have in the past. I've always been kind of a 100,000-foot view kind of a guy and looking at the big picture of things, but doing the analytical work I've had to do on the doctoral side has really helped me to be able to develop skills that I didn't have in the past. And I would say, in conjunction with what you just said, one of the things that's really happened in me, I think, being able to kind of rewire my brain at the later stage of my life now to think more analytically has allowed that right brain to open up and be a little bit more perceptive. And I trust, I guess you'd say I trust my gut more these days. And as we get out into the field and we talk with different folks who have been experiencers or have, the Point Pleasant type residents and people in West Virginia in general, as we have conversations with them, you get little sparks and little ideas and things, and we follow the information, and we find all kinds of neat little correlations and dovetails and synchronicities. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's nothing better than actually visiting the site or going to a conference or a festival and intermingling with people. Bill Konkoleski is the head of Michigan MUFON, and he is an experiencer. He's had abduction experiences, I think, a good part of his life. He told me that when people that aren't really sensitive or experiencers, when they spend a lot of time with him, that they have a tendency to also start being more sensitive or having experiences. So there's something to that proximity of people that are sensitive or are used to that kind of thing that seems to open up things for other people. I'm not sure if I actually want that or not. I've always thought that I want to know, and if I could possibly be a little more sensitive or psychic or however you want to put it, it might be a good thing. But I've heard a lot of people that have this, uh, uh, sometimes it's hard to kind of shut the door and keep it out when you want to. But it's interesting that you say that your analytical side has actually opened up the more, I guess you call it, the more speculative side.
I'd say that it has, Steve, and I've always been kind of a dreamer. I mean, that's just the way that I'm wired, and I've always been a very creative, right brain thinker. Love talking with people, really enjoy the writing process, that type of a thing. But I think that by focusing more on, like I mentioned, and you just kind of reiterated, on more of the analytical stuff, it's just allowed that right brain to kind of take off on its own while being grounded by the left brain, if that makes sense.
I find that the analytical part. I mean, I'm kind of I was asked that on a show once. I can't look at this phenomena after being exposed to researchers like John Keel and Jacques Vallée without immediately seeing patterns and saying, oh, that connects to this, whether it be past, present, or different types of phenomena. So that's where the analytic part comes in for me. But without any further ado, let's introduce our two great guests for tonight. And these are people that, I'll get to that in just a minute. Amanda Raber is a lifelong experiencer of the paranormal and a UFO field investigator. She's no stranger to dealing with the unexplainable in everyday life. She's trying to find balance between the seen and unseen worlds and to make sense of her own experiences, as she also tries to decipher the Mothman and additional phenomena. And also we have Jackie Kuselis. She's a sharp researcher and analytical thinker. She's also highly sensitive to geomagnetic energies, astrology, and numerology. She's been interested in the Point Pleasant Mothman for years and has made several trips there, becoming fast friends with area residents, including the late Carolyn Harris, proprietor of the Harris's Steakhouse, a.k.a. the Mothman Diner. The relationship she shares with her husband, Bill, has several tie-ins to the Point Pleasant phenomena that was uncovered by author John Keel. Ladies, welcome to the High Strangeness Factor.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, it's great to have you here. And as if people listen to the show I did with Bill, you'll know that we all met when fate moved its huge hand. We all met on Main Street in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It was the weekend that Seth Breedlove of Small Town Monsters was down there. He had a little display in front of the Mothman Museum, and he was advertising his most recent DVD, the Mothman Legacy, plus he had all his other great documentaries out there. And we kind of, actually, Bill, you recognized me, so that's how it started.
I sure did. Yeah, it's funny. Jeff Momsley had invited us to go to the museum on Saturday because Seth and his crew were going to be there. And as we showed up, I immediately recognized you from our connection on Facebook. And the four of us just started talking. And like I like to joke with people at this point, Steve Ward basically shanghaied us, and we didn't get a chance to meet the small town guy.
Well, I was thinking of trying to prevent you from leaving, but I find out there's an ordinance against that. You're really not supposed to hold people against their will. But I admit I did not recognize you guys, and my excuse is that your picture on Facebook at arm's length is only a few millimeters high, so there'd be no way I could actually recognize those facial features, as I recall. But anyway, accurate. That's my excuse anyway. Okay.
Another fun thing about that meeting was we were supposed to leave the day before. We weren't even supposed to be there on that day. When Jeff told us about the event that was going to be going on with the Small Town Monsters, we went back to the hotel, added another night to our stay just so we could come check it out. So, yeah, we really almost didn't ever meet.
Well, I'm really glad we did, because that really made the weekend. That was just so much fun. And like I just talked to Bill, it's when you get, so many people are, you can be very alone when you have these interests, whether you're an experiencer or not. And there were always a few people I could talk to at work. My first big UFO conference was the MUFON Symposium in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 1976. Dr. J. Allen Hynek was there and some other big names. And it wasn't until 2006, my first Mothman Festival, that I had a chance to be in one of these situations again, when you can talk to all kinds of people. And I had this huge grin on my face from ear to ear, meeting various authors and so forth. And actually, I did go to Point Pleasant back in 1977. After I read the book, The Mothman Prophecies. But it had been so long, I didn't remember what it was actually like. Well, let me do this. I was going to do this later, but talking about fate moving its huge hand. Now, the three of you, of course, Bill and Jackie are married. No surprise there. And by the way, I'm trying to remember how did I remember kind of Bill's journey to become interested in UFOs and so forth, and eventually to the Mothman. But Jackie, how was it for you?
My interest in UFOs, I honestly don't know when it started. I know that as a young child, I grew up out in the country, and I would literally be watching the sky all the time at night, and something pulled me towards the sky and astrology. And I didn't find out until later on in life that my dad had actually seen a UFO when he was out farming. He was in the field one night and he saw a UFO. I never got to speak to him about it. I found out after he had passed away. But then in 2005, I saw my first actual UFO that I know for a fact was a UFO. I've seen orbs many times, but this thing was a huge, big silver thing hovering over a farm. And it was just there. And I said out loud in the car by myself. That's why I had a flip phone, so I couldn't get a picture. I said, "What is that? What the heck is that thing?" I mean, I was just baffled by it. I never reported it. I expected that somebody somewhere would say something and it would show up in the newspaper, and it never did.
And did it look like it was something solid, something metallic?
It was metallic. It was a very bright, almost like platinum looking. And it reminded me of what the blimp looks like, only it was more stretched out and not as fat as a blimp would be. It's kind of hard to describe, but and I went back to that point last summer and drove down that same road and was looking to see if there was anything at all there that I might have mistaken, and there was no mistaking it. I was on my way to work, so I wanted to keep driving to go to it. But because I was on my way to work, I didn't do it. I was just expecting to hear something on the news or in the paper, and I did not.
What did you pick up any sense of anything, any feelings when you saw it?
I felt pulled to it. So I don't know about the feeling part of it. I don't recall that, but I felt like I needed to go investigate it. But because and I can't be late, I went to work instead.
So there was no missing time involved, or you would have been late for work.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There was no missing time. But I do wonder about childhood. There were times when me or my sisters would just kind of disappear for a while, and people would wonder where we went, but it was never really brought up too much. My mom used to tell us that we'd say things, and I don't know exactly what some of these things were, but I asked my sister, and she can't remember either now. We're all RH negative, me and my sisters. And my mom used to tell us that our eyes were playing tricks on us. And it's like, no, your eyes don't play tricks on you. Your mom plays tricks on you, so you don't keep telling her these crazy things that you're seeing, catching things out of the corner of your eye. We were woke up in the middle of the night, and I had a brother too. He was not an RH negative, but there were 4 of us kids, and we all woke up at the same time at night. And I think I might have been 4 or 5 years old. And I remember we all saw Jesus standing at the end of our hallway down by our mom and dad's bedroom, and they ran to mom and dad's bedroom, and I wasn't scared at all until they were like saying, "Come on, Jackie, come on, hurry, you got to get," and then I got freaked out because I didn't understand why everybody was so afraid. But that was just one of the weird things that happened as a child to me.
That's really common where the children are experiencing something and the parents can't really process it, so they just say you're imagining things. I wondered about the orb phenomena you saw. Was it outdoors or indoors or?
They're always outdoors, and I just had an experience this past summer, a couple of them actually. Here at home, I was outside on a nice warm sunny day, and I just kept seeing all these orbs, and I was just like watching them, and I couldn't figure out what they were, and they literally looked like bubbles, like somebody was blowing bubbles, kind of. They were like dodging in all these different directions, and I actually walked around to see if I could figure out where they were coming from, but they were all in the same area, and there was nothing around. And then it happened a few days later, and I asked Bill to look, and he said he couldn't look, he couldn't see them. It was like in the sunlight, so he couldn't see them. And then when we were at Point Pleasant out at the TNT area, Amanda and I were both videoing birds, these big birds that were out there. And later on, I was looking at the video, and there's literally an orb in the sky, and it's like a round ball, and then it just kind of drops down and falls out of sight. And the sky had a really weird appearance around that time too. So that was another, yeah.
That's interesting. Get more into that in a moment. Now, you and Bill met Amanda at a Illinois MUFON meeting?
Yes.
That's again when fate moved its huge hand. So I have to know, what was that like? When you guys have such a great rapport. When I saw you in Point Pleasant, what was it like when you guys first got together?
Amanda, why don't you take that one?
Yeah.
Honestly,
Be honest now. You can tell us. You can tell us the truth.
Yeah, it was, I think, my either first or second MUFON meeting, and we ended up sitting together at dinner afterwards. I sat next to Jackie and Bill, and I swear it's like we've known each other forever, at least for me. I just immediately was so comfortable around them and felt like, these are people I can really talk to and be comfortable around. And that's not such a common thing for me. I'm usually kind of standoffish till I get to know people. But yeah, Jackie and Bill just have such a good vibe. I don't know.
Just out of curiosity, what were some of the things that you guys talked about at that dinner? Do you remember?
Nothing too out there, really. I mean, well, right away, we kind of hit it off because Jackie's daughter has the same name as me. So I knew she had good taste. But yeah, just stuff like talking about our families and a little bit of our experiences. It was nothing too out there.
Okay.
I think.
Well, that can be. I went to the Michigan Paracon up north. I've been there a few times, and I went to a couple of the dinners. And one of the dinners, it was the speakers or whatever weren't really that interesting, but man, I just lucked into a great table full of people. And if the stars line up right, and you hit a table with people where you can just like you guys did, boy, there's just nothing better than that. So what I know that you're an investigator for Illinois MUFON. Take us through that. What made you decide to do that?
Actually, it was I heard about all these Mothman reports in Chicago, where I live, and that sparked my attention. I was not investigating anything at the time. I was just on Facebook one day scrolling, and I saw something about Mothman in Chicago. That's weird. So I start clicking around, and I ended up on the MUFON website, and I'm searching around there. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I found where you can become a field investigator. And I was like, what? That's not.
Did you have to go through a course or something?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, I had to study. There is a fee, so people don't just do it on a whim. Yeah, but you have to take a test. You have to get 80% on that test or more to be let in. Because they want to weed people out, which makes sense. So yeah, I found that, and I was like, well, this is too weird not to do. And I've never really had any UFO or alien experiences, so I was pretty neutral on the topic. So I thought that that was probably a good thing to be an investigator. Like, I don't have a bias either way, so I could be impartial when looking at cases and such. I have seen a couple weird lights in the sky, but nothing I reported or anything like that. But no, it was just kind of random internet surfing that led me to MUFON, and it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Have there been any really outstanding cases or cases of real high strangeness that you've bumped into so far?
I've gotten some really weird reports, but that's more about
the people than the experience.
Exactly.
Okay.
But we had a really, really interesting case right before my birthday a couple years ago, and it came from my hometown. And two different people had taken photos of this object in the sky that it wasn't just a light. It looked kind of like a big luminous jellyfish, but without the tentacles. And so I went to my hometown to go check it out. It was really, really exciting because we had two, I think then a third came forward too. We had photos, we had several witnesses. It was a place I could get to investigate. I'm familiar with the area, so we thought we were onto something big. And then we did some more research, and it turns out, I may have preferred it to be aliens, but it turned out there were surveillance balloons being tested in the area.
Ah, okay.
Yes. And on that day, at that time, they're kind of in the area. They were special sort of balloon-ish devices but they don't get carried around by the wind, so they stay in place. So
okay.
So that was really exciting for a day or so.
It would have been really cool if it actually had tentacles on it. There's actually quite there's a lot of sightings that seem to be, if they're legitimate, something biological. And I don't know if you guys have ever looked into the work of Trevor James Constable. He supposedly photographed some of these sky critters with infrared film over the Mojave Desert in the 1950s. Really, really interesting stuff. Some of his stuff may be legitimate. For a while, he got involved in channeling. He learned how to channel from George Van Tassel, the guy that lived under Giant Rock in California and used to channel the Space Brothers. Constable left that behind, but that's a whole interesting area of research. I was reading some of his correspondence to Gray Barker in the Barker archives a few years ago. And so that's there are some people like Ivan Sanderson was I thought it was very credible. And John Keel experienced some phenomena. I don't know if you remember the story in the Chief Cornstalk hunting ground where they saw the purple lights.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lecture where he gets more detail where these things came down and surrounded him, almost like an intelligence, and they didn't seem to be solid objects. So that was kind of interesting that the experience may have been you approach it like an objective researcher. You didn't know what it was. I mean, it could have been UFO, ET, biological, or something that was explainable. So what drew you, Amanda, to the MUFON meetings initially? Why did you decide to go?
Specifically because I saw that it was an option to be a UFO fielding investigator.
Okay. So that's what you knew.
So I just kind of jumped right in.
Okay.
I did go to a meeting before I joined just to feel it out. Like I said, a little standoffish at first. I wanted to make sure that the people weren't, creeps and but when I went to my first meeting, and it was great. Everybody was so nice and non-creepy.
Well, they are great because I've been to several Michigan MUFON meetings, and there are there's one gentleman there, nice guy, but he's the conspiracy guy, okay? Mm-hmm. And he'll say things like, "Do you want to know who killed Kennedy?" And I'm thinking, not exactly this time, but go ahead. So we have, but the thing is that I have heard some absolutely fascinating accounts from people just sitting. We have the kind of the brunch before the speaker comes in, and I've just heard the fascinating experiences that credible people have had, and that's one of the things I like about it the most.
And that's kind of why I got. One of the reasons I decided to join was I loved sitting in a room with a bunch of other people talking about UFO propulsion and experiences and sightings in a serious manner, not like in a speculative, whoa, what if sort of thing. Like we were having serious conversations about, to me, what is the most out there stuff, and I was just fascinated. It's really fun to have a place where you can go and talk about that stuff, and you learn so much. Like you said, so there's the conspiracy guy, there's the nuts and bolts guy, there's the super spectrum guy. There's within one room and under one topic, there are so many ways to look at this. And again, I don't really have an angle on this yet, so I'm just taking it all in.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you because I think I will admit that there are I guess there are answers that I would kind of like the truth to gravitate toward. Not that that the truth doesn't gravitate; it is what it is. But I have been my thinking is kind of in a state of flux. I mean, there's been times when I've been 100% Keelian, where there's nothing, that there are no ETs. That there's other times when I've kind of gone back a bit. I remember Jacques Vallée writing that he would be disappointed if the answer was just ET, because of some of the high strangeness. Jackie, what has your experience been like at the MUFON meetings? Have you attended a lot of them, or just a couple of them?
Well, we actually went to our first meeting in May of 2018.
Okay.
And originally, we went to our first meeting in Cherry Valley, Illinois, which is near Rockford, Illinois, and we knew it was at the library, and we had been wanting to go for quite a while, and we had finally just said, we need to do this. If we're going to go, we need to do this. So my husband and we made the arrangements. We got in the car, we took off. I'm just right along with him because he knows exactly where he's going. And we get to Rockford Library, and there's like this big group of people gathering, and these a lady walked up and she asked if we were were we there to pray or something. Long story short, they were there to pray. There was a drag queen coming to the library to read books to kids, and she was like talking, and she was getting really weird, and there was somebody with a handkerchief and sunglasses leaning against the building, and I was freaking out about that person, and she's like, I know what they're doing. I see those rainbows all over them. And it was just like, oh my God, what did we get ourselves into? It's like, they opened the library. The news started showing up. They started setting up cameras. I'm like, I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to be part of any of this, So we got inside and we asked where the MUFON meeting was being held, and they said there wasn't one there. Well, we went to the wrong library. We were in Rockford. We needed to go to Cherry Valley. So we got to the Cherry Valley meeting late.
You went to the wrong library, let me tell you. Go ahead.
Thank God it was the wrong library. We got inside, and when I went in and sat down, I just kind of was looking around. I felt like a kind of a state of panic from all of that. And I sat down, I looked around, and I'm like, whoo, normal people. It has been awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself, to the point that when this pandemic hit, it was just heartbreaking. I miss the people. I just miss the people. Thank God for social media, because you can kind of keep up. And then we have a Zoom meeting in Illinois. Sam sets up meetings so we can have guests on, and we take part of that. And then we have a Tuesday night meeting where the three of us and Sam get together.
Oh, excellent. Bill, what about you? By the way, feel free to chime in anytime you want.
Sure.
But what have the meetings been like for you?
I'm just taking this in, Sam, because it's great to hear it from the lady's perspective. I would say that the experience that we had with MUFON, Jackie and I had, we like to do like couples goals, and we had set up a couples goal to check out a Rockford MUFON meeting just to see what it was all about. And we live in a little town called Sycamore, Illinois, which is about 60 miles west of Chicago and about 35 miles southeast of Rockford. So we, like she was saying, she trusted me to be the driver because I, quote unquote, know where I'm going all the time. So I brought us to that Rockford library where the way that Jackie was just describing it was great. Kind of the tip of the whole iceberg here was in this whole situation. When we left and we showed up in Cherry Valley a half an hour late for the meeting, I'm going to be late to my own funeral. That's just kind of who I am. And I have this problem of making a big splash most places where I go. We met with Sam that Jackie was just referring to. It's a gentleman by the name of Sam Moranto, who's a very well-versed researcher who's been in the paranormal and in ufology for many, many decades. We met him immediately, the Illinois State Director, and a gentleman by the name of Jim Peniston walked by. He happened to be there too of the
Rendlesham Forest
incident.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Yeah, we met the both of them there. But I mean, our story that Jackie just shared with you about showing up at the transvestite read to the kids and the fundamentalist Christians showing up and basically raising Cain because this travesty of religiosity was going on. I mean, it was we made a big splash our first MUFON meeting, and it was just a lot of fun. And since then, I think the way that Amanda was describing it, and Jackie did as well too, and you too, Steve. What's so cool about going to those is that some of the speakers, it's kind of hit or miss. I mean, sometimes they're very engaging, sometimes they're very entertaining, sometimes they're just a little off, or they don't have as much pop as you're hoping for in a speaker. But those gatherings afterwards, where you're sitting down and you're having dinner and you're chit-chatting with people, like Amanda said, where you're having conversations with like-minded folks who you can go into mothy mode with, and they don't bat an eye like the general public does. It's been wonderful for us.
Yeah, the first meeting we went to in Tinley Park, we went out to eat afterwards with a bunch of people, and we met a lady named Roxana, and we were talking with her, and we were like, still like on high from just meeting so many people and sitting in a room with so many people that you could talk freely about anything and you didn't get judged. And she said, made the comment like, you found your tribe. And we're like, yes, we found our tribe. That's what's been missing. So
that's great. And I can't help but think when you said Tinley Park, there's that great episode of the UFO Hunters where those low-flying triangles went over. Do you remember that episode in that area?
Yes, and the gentleman, the researcher that is in that is Sam Moranto.
Oh, okay. That's where I heard the name.
So yeah,
okay.
we're pretty familiar with that one.
Yeah, I really, I didn't watch the show much when it was on, but I really miss it now that it's not on anymore. Even though I didn't agree with all their ideas or whatever, I wish we had something like that, because that's some of the stuff that's on now just gets a little bit too unreality, for a reality show. Now, Amanda, you said that you're probably a little better than me because you're in a position right now where you're just very open to what you're kind of looking at what you're doing. You're doing it properly. And I got into a discussion with how we have the controversy with cryptids, especially Bigfoot. Is it a flesh and blood unknown creature, or is it something more ethereal, interdimensional? Does it phase out? Does it go into another vortex or something like that? And man, there's no common ground there.
Right.
And but when I got in this discussion, I suggested that if you it's important to listen to what the experiencer is saying, and that if it gets to be kind of high strange and gets out of the realm of what you're kind of ready to accept, perhaps we should still listen to what they're saying, and they might not be lying or delusional or whatever. They might really be seeing something. So that's very important, I think, and I think that's pretty much what you're doing is
And if their experience does not fit your frame of reference, well, maybe your frame of reference is incomplete. So yeah, totally agree. And it could be physical beings, it could be energetic beings, like you said. It could be both. It could be neither.
Exactly.
Who are we to
Don't you all think that, I'll let you continue in a minute, Amanda,
Sure.
that there's probably more than one answer to some of these things?
Oh yeah, definitely so.
But anyway, I interrupted you, Amanda. So let me just mention here quickly. Somebody friended me on Facebook, and the first thing he asked me was, I checked out to make sure, that we had friends in common and that he was a paranormal researcher, not some of these attractive ladies that have just changed their profile picture 2 minutes ago. That probably is some guy with a bad complexion in a sub basement somewhere. But anyway, so he the first thing he asked me, he said, "Do you believe in?" I think he said "woo," WOO, the expression people use, woo woo for the psychic aspect of Bigfoot, whatever. And I didn't get it at first, and then I understood what he was asking, and I said, "Well, I've looked at the research of Ron Moorhead, who started out as a very much a flesh and blood researcher, so to speak, but then decided that Bigfoot was something else. He even wrote a book called Quantum Bigfoot. And also Sally Shepard Wolford experienced some high strangeness in the Bigfoot category in Washington State back in 1973. So he wrote back and said, okay, well, thanks, but no thanks. He wasn't interested in somebody that would accept the possibility of a paranormal aspect of Bigfoot. And I thought, wow, that's kind of mind-blowing. So Amanda, what I wonder is then, what drew you to Point Pleasant, John Keel? Because obviously John Keel went through a transition where at first, like so many of us, thought the answer was strictly ET, but then he's the classic guy. When he wrote Trojan Horse, he's the one that listened to what people said and then looked at history and so forth and put it all together. So what tell us about how is it that you became interested in Point Pleasant and the Mothman?
It's all still relatively new to me. I didn't know really anything about it until I saw that Facebook post about Mothman in Chicago, and I start looking into it. And that was in 2017, I believe. So I didn't know much, and all I knew was what was on that one website, maybe Wikipedia. But then when I got into MUFON, I had told Sam, the state director, that I think he asked how I came to find the group, and I said I saw the Mothman reports. And so that kind of lit a light bulb in his head, and because he had around the same time met Jackie and Bill, who were interested in the Mothman stuff, and he himself was handling some of these Mothman cases. So Sam is the one who kind of put Bill and Jackie and I together.
Okay.
Yes, he kind of lit a fire under this whole thing. He put us together to be a kind of research group almost. And then, Jackie and Bill go out to Point Pleasant every year, and I've never been, but they were planning to go back in October, just for a week, hang out, and I joined them. Like a year prior, I knew pretty much nothing about it, but I've been so immersed in this. I've been learning fast, I think. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And Point Pleasant was a blast. And now I'm hooked on Point Pleasant. I can't wait to go back.
Well, I saw one of your posts after you had gone there, and it was sort of like, my impression was that you're sort of taking everything in. You have just experienced this week down there, and you're kind of contemplating and just going back over all the experiences and trying to process it. So I was just kind of curious what was going on in your mind at that time.
Yeah, my brain was so full because we did, there's the physical stuff, there's the sites and the history, and then there was, we had some kind of weird kind of woo stuff happen while we were out there. Tune in later.
And what a great place to have it happen in the TNT area. And for those the few people that don't know what we're talking about, is the Mcclintock wildlife area about 6 miles north of Point Pleasant. It was a munitions area during World War II where they made TNT, and it was a huge industrial complex. But now it's in the daytime, it's one of the creepiest places you can imagine, and a great setting for anything strange to happen.
Yeah, and so being rather new to this, I didn't read any John Keel until maybe a year or so ago, and that was strange for me because I had been thinking about these sorts of things, but I hadn't really heard anybody with my particular, I was forming, possible theories. I'm still not solidly in it, solidly hanging on to any of them, but when I read Mothman Prophecies, and when John Keel's describing the super spectrum, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that makes sense. I felt like that really resonated with me, and of course that whole story takes place in Point Pleasant, so that made me really excited to go there as well and to see where he was inspired to come up with these perspectives and where it all went down.
Right, because I think it was that experience in the Ohio Valley, and then all the weird things that happened to him. Have you read the Mothman Prophecies at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Pardon me?
I've read it twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You got to get it on Audible, man. I don't know how many times I've read it, but now I've heard it maybe a dozen times on Audible. It's pretty well done. Okay, I had a question. Just bursting here. What else have you read by Keel? Have you had a chance to read any of his anthologies, of his articles, or anything like that?
I did read Trojan Horse, Project Trojan Horse.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
A couple of the compilations by Andy Colvin.
Okay.
Yeah, so far I think those are the only ones that I've read.
Oh no, that's great. I mean, the Trojan Horse was the one that I was your basic ET guy, and I was very happy with little silver-suited aliens jumping out of egg-shaped craft and picking up soil samples. And when it was funny because I had read Strange Creatures from Time and Space, where he first talks about window areas, and we had our high school UFO group, and then we had, when I was after college, we had kind of an informal group. We actually had some professional people in there. Not me, I was unemployed. But Rick and I were talking about this book that Keel wrote, Trojan Horse, and we were bad mouthing it before we even read it. What's Keel think he's doing, trying to connect everything together? We might as well just quit this business. But once I read it, it really kind of opened the door. And another one I'm revisiting is the Eighth Tower, which in the Mothman Prophecies, the editors cut out about half of it. So about 2/3 of the Eighth Tower are remnants of the Mothman Prophecies, and a lot of that deals more with the super spectrum idea. But let me remind everybody that you are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am Steve Ward. Bill and I are talking to Jackie Kuselis and Amanda Raber, and about a plethora of the paranormal. How do you like that? Okay. Let's see. I want to get a little more into some of Keel's ideas with you, Amanda. But Jackie, what was kind of your you guys have been going to Point Pleasant for a long time, for quite a while now, and you knew Carolyn, and you've gotten to know a lot of the people there. What was your first visit like? What made you decide to go the first time?
Well, we always took an annual vacation, Bill and I would, and I said, "Where do you want to go this year?" And he said, "Let's go to Point Pleasant." And I'm like, "That sounds great." And so I used to like to schedule everything, completely on our trips. So we always had a plan where we're going to stay, everything else. And we went to Serpent Mound on our way to Point Pleasant. So that's the one place that was on my bucket list, was Serpent Mound. And so we got to Point Pleasant. We got there after 5:00, so the museum was closed. When we got our room, we saw that we were on the Memorial Bridge side. So that just was awesome to look out every day to see that. And once we got to Point Pleasant, the museum was closed. We went and saw the Mothman statue, and we started walking down towards the post office and kept going down the street, and we didn't really know anything. It's just this little small town. We didn't know what we were looking for or anything at that point. And Carolyn was looking out the window of her diner, and we just kept walking. I said to Bill, "I think we need to go back there. I think that lady wants to talk with us." I have a sense of knowing. I've always had this just sense of knowing. Things come to me, I know it, and people are always like, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, "I just know it, So we went inside, and we talked to her for quite a long time, and she is the sweetest woman I've ever met in my life. She was so friendly, so welcoming, and answered every question we ever asked, except about the Silver Bridge. She didn't want to talk about the bridge. She would talk about the lights. She'd talk about the government men, is what she called the men in black. And she talked about some of the experiences. She talked about her brother seeing lights in the sky, she said she saw the lights. Her brother saw a craft, I believe. She said the lights were just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. So she also blushed when she talked about different documentaries and asked if we had seen this one or that one. And she said she blushed a little bit, and she said, "I've been on about 16 of those, I think." So she was just trying, and then she talked about the Mothman Festival, and we asked her, Jeff Wamsley, "Oh my gosh, do you think we could meet Jeff Wamsley?" And she says, "He was just in here. You just missed him." She goes, "But yeah, he should be down by the museum. You should be able to get to see him." So, yeah, it was just so unreal, because you see these people on TV, you read all this information, you read Jeff's books, and then you go there, and it's like the friendliest place on earth, I swear.
Yes, I mentioned to my wife, Fate magazine had a list of events coming up, and I saw the Mothman Festival, and I had been there almost 30 years before, but I said, "Man, I'd like to go to that." So she, unbeknownst to me, called the Low Hotel and made a reservation. So we went down there that first time, and I had read Jeff's books, and so I sought him out right away and praised him for because in his books he revisits a lot of the original witnesses, and which is good, because people read the Mothman Prophecies from half a century ago and think, "Oh, it's a long time ago," or whatever. But when he revisited the witnesses, you find out that, oh yeah, they remember what happened, and he corrected some of the mistakes and so forth that editors made. But yeah, that was and Carolyn, of course, Carolyn lost her child on the Silver Bridge that night, and that's of course why she doesn't really talk about it. But you think about here she and Jeff co-founded the Mothman Festival in spite of the tragedy. Whether a lot of people think that the Mothman, whether it's a creature or apparition, caused it, the bridge, or maybe it was a harbinger or whatever, or some people think it's completely separate. But either way, it's connected in space and time. So the fact that she had done all this for the town and helped to revitalize the economy and everything, leaving that behind, is really amazing. She was just when I would walk into Carolyn's diner, it was like walking into Mom's kitchen at home. It's just great, It's such a warm and friendly place. And then of course Marcella, sister, I guess. Was that her sister? Yes. She had a Mothman sighting that she told us about in the TNT area. So, boy, just such a great place.
All strangeness aside there, I just love, like you said, how they took this. It was a tragedy. It was really bad for that small town, and people are still feeling the effects of it, but they were able to turn it around to something good for the town. And
yes,
I love that.
The classic turning something negative into something positive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I went to the 50-year remembrance ceremony that Carolyn had just passed the year before. So she was the one that started it just a few years before, and she was the one that would read the names. Or no, I guess it was not her that would read the names of those, but it was just a tribute to those who had fallen. Well, very, very briefly, a friend of mine and I, John, we were in the bridge, the River Museum the next day. We met a guy named Bill Edmondson. He was one of the survivors on the bridge. He was driving a truck across, and he went down with the bridge. And he told us how he escaped the bridge, and he was injured, and he was picked up out of the icy cold waters. I'll tell you guys about it. If I haven't already, I'll tell you guys about it sometime, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But it was just amazing to hear the story of somebody that had survived that bridge that night, the bridge collapse that night. I guess, Bill, did you want to add anything at this moment? Anything you'd like to bring up?
Just to echo what Jackie was saying too, when we arrived in Point Pleasant for our first visit back in 2016, and it really was surreal because, like she was saying, you see all these people on television, you see the sites, the legend, you're really well versed in understanding Keel's literature, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get to meet the people themselves, like you had just said and Jackie had said as well, Carolyn really seemed like Mom. I mean, she really did. Mm-hmm. And she pulled us in and we sat down. We went back to her diner every single day that we were there in Point Pleasant on our first visit. We just got really comfortable with her. And, for me personally, being an aspiring author and working in my studies to get to the point that I'm at now with my psychology degree pending here in the next month or so, I had finally resolved, and after having met Carolyn, she'd given us her contact information, phone numbers, call anytime, that kind of thing. I was going to call her, and I told Jackie on the way to her mom's house right before Christmas, to celebrate Christmas in 2016, I'm going to call Carolyn, and I'm going to see if I can interview her and just begin to write about her. And it wasn't but the same day or the next day that we learned that she had had a heart attack. And then she passed away. And, for us, the both of us were just devastated to hear that, because it was as if we had met, or at least I can speak from my own personal experience, I had met a long lost relative that gave me some type of closure to build a relationship, some kind of generational memory, probably of my great grandmother who raised me from my age of being born to 17 years old. It's like I met her again and then she was gone. But we talk about her legacy and the things that she did and the way that she and Jeff co-founded the entire Mothman Festival, and to have watched this great thing happen, as Amanda talked about, for the community of Point Pleasant. And then I stop and think, as you were mentioning this, Steve, my dissertation topic, and the whole story is about post-traumatic growth. And what a wonderful communal aspect of post-traumatic growth. They took the Silver Bridge tragedy, the Mothman legend, and decades later have turned it into a prospering town where Jeff and his friends have just totally revitalized that downtown area in Point Pleasant and turned it into really a tourist attraction with the warmest of welcomes for anybody who wants to be welcomed. I mean, you feel like you're going home to family every time you go there. And it's what keeps Jackie and me going back. And I think Amanda's going to probably be with us for most, if not all, of our trips into the future.
Yep, you're going to have a hard time getting rid of me.
We adopted her, Steve. We've kind of adopted her.
Well, that's cool, especially if she gets an allowance.
I don't ever recall Carolyn ever. I mean, she probably did, but she always referred to the Mothman as the bird. That was another.
Right. Yes, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And when I went down there that first time in '77, the old power plant was still standing, and so I don't know how I found the place. I think I had a map. So I went out there with my 35 millimeter camera, and some guy in a hard hat met me halfway, and he asked me what I was doing there. And I said, I was trying to sound cool, like, I said, well, I'd heard stories about the bird. I didn't say the Mothman like a commoner would, but he kind of rolled his eyes and he said, I remember. It was about 10 years before. And so he was just concerned that it was an old ruin. He didn't want me to hurt myself. So he went in there and kind of supervised me to make sure that I was okay, and he let me take all the pictures I wanted. But yeah, that's what they called it, the bird. It wasn't. In fact, Mothman didn't look like a moth anyway. So that's. I guess it was a creative copy editor that dubbed the term Mothman in the wake of the Batman TV show that was going on at the time. But let me get back to you, Amanda. What I guess I'd like to do now is, boy, I've got. We're going to have to do this again because time is flying. Is everybody okay for time right now, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. What I'd like to do is, and it doesn't really have to focus on Keel, but we talked a little bit off air about some of the sort of catchphrases Keel had, some of the things that he would talk about. Is there anything about in your readings of John Keel, Amanda, that stand out? It doesn't necessarily have to be Keel. I guess I'm looking for things that I guess where the light bulb goes off, things that you have. I mean, we all experienced that where I said, "Oh, wow, yeah, I never thought about that," or maybe connections or whatever. What kinds of things have you been learning that have meant a lot to you?
Oh, well, like I mentioned, I think earlier, the super spectrum theory really grabbed me. Because some people have better eyesight than others. Some people have better sense of smell. Our senses are very limited, and there's a range. So what might be a normal sensory experience for one person through sight, sound, taste, smell, touch might not be the same for someone else, and that just when I realized that, I mean, that totally blew my mind. I mean, who's to say we know we don't all perceive color in the same way? So who's to say that there are other, color and sound or vibrations, and there's got to be other vibrations out there that our little senses are not detecting, or some people maybe are more tuned to those. They have better eyesight, they have better whatever this other sense is too. And so that's not something I'm set out to prove or disprove, but because I don't know that we can even prove it. We'd have to come up with a science probably to detect that. But I guess I just can't really rule anything out. Who's to say it's just not all around us all the time? We're the weird ones, maybe,
But his idea of the super spectrum was he gives the idea of the regular spectrum, and then that you have to go in order to account for some of this high strangeness, and the fact that only certain people seem to be more able to see these things or to be sensitive to these things. So that's when he made it's a great. You can call it a literary device or a hypothesis or whatever, and Keel would do that a lot. Even he said that his term ultra-terrestrial was kind of a literary device, and he borrowed it from Ivan Sanderson, and it just kind of trying to deal with these entities or whatever this energy is. It's something that he thought perhaps was a natural condition of the earth.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, where the super spectrum fits in. And have you thought much about how when he talks about certain people are more prone to see these things and not just UFOs?
Yes, yeah. Like I said, we all have slight variations in our own senses. I think some people are more able to tune into this sort of thing, whether they want to or not. Oftentimes, they probably don't want to tune in, but it's there. Like myself, although I haven't had really UFO experiences, I've had all sorts of other experiences.
Like haunting type experiences?
Yes,
Or
for as long
okay.
as I remember. And, like the house I grew up in, for example, it was just my normal life that weird stuff was happening there. And I thought that was completely normal because that's all I knew. And then as I get older, I find out that no, it's not normal to hear strangers talking in your dining room at 11 at night. um, anyway, the
Have you ever? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I experienced a lot of stuff in that house. My parents, a little bit. They had a couple really strange experiences in that house. My brother never experienced anything. So we've got 4 people living in one house and a variety of experiences and perceptions. So yeah, it's not, maybe it's not so like location based, but it's perception based.
Did any of you have any experience, anything like some kind of a cryptid or some kind of a strange or unknown animal in or around the house or anywhere? Or is that something that was kind of outside your experience?
I had I don't know what it was. I thought it was a Bigfoot. My siblings and my cousins and I were outside playing softball or baseball on the side of the house where we had like a little field that we played in, and off in the distance in a field that had just been either the corn. I think the corn was just coming up, and you could see this big thing that just kind of rocked back and forth as it walked, but it was kind of squared off around the head and the shoulders looking. And we were just looking and looking and looking at this thing, and it freaked us all out so bad that we ran in the house and told our moms, and they told us to go back outside and play, that it was nothing. And then when I was talking to Sam Morado about it, he said that there had been Bigfoot sightings in the Polo, Illinois area. That's where I grew up, many times. And we also used to have like really foul odors, but you grow up on a farm and you smell things, but these odors were not like natural farm odor smells. So that's the only thing I can think of that was really like a cryptid, that I can think of right now, at the top of my head. That was really freaky to me.
Okay. And Amanda, so were your paranormal experiences are primarily in the haunting realm? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so. I've seen a few critters in my apartment that
the kind that get trapped by mouse traps, or something?
No, more. It's got to be more of an energetic.
Oh, okay, like a shadow creature.
Yeah, I've met the 3-dimensional shadow creeping over me in the middle.
Oh boy.
I've seen a couple other little weird things.
Okay, well here's what I'm getting at for all of you is that a few years ago, a lady contacted me on Facebook, and she and her husband had I'll keep this brief, but she and her husband had a missing time experience just standing on their front porch, and it was bugging her. She's trying to find out. She was able to find a therapist that revealed what apparently happened in that missing time, but she's very very rational about it. She says she doesn't remember it consciously, so she takes it with a grain of salt. But when I first talked to her, I asked her a series of John Keel questions. John Keel said you ask the contactee, the experiencer, what he or she had for breakfast. And what he meant was you find out all about the person, about their childhood and so forth. And he would find that somebody that would have a UFO experience were also experiencing haunting phenomena, poltergeist, strange phone calls. Not always, but sometimes electronic interference. They would experience a whole array of things. And I asked her, I found out in a short time that she experienced shadow people. and both her sons saw orb phenomena inside and outside the house. They had typical haunting phenomena. And then I asked her the question. I said, this is going to be a strange question, but have you ever seen anything like a Bigfoot or some kind of an unknown creature? And she said no. And then she said, oh, wait a minute. My sister-in-law and my mother-in-law, they saw something near this property a couple times over the years. And it looked like a panther standing on two legs. So my point is, and we were talking about this before, some researchers, they want to hear about your UFO experience. Oh, shadow people, and I don't do shadow people. Bigfoot, panthers on two legs, I don't do that. But so what I'm wondering is, in talking to both of you, do you feel you have apparently have had an array of experiences, not just one thing, but you may be tuned into the super spectrum a little bit, John Keel's super spectrum, where you experience more than one type of phenomena. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead, Jackie. You were talking about you saw the Bigfoot-like creature, and you also had that classic UFO sighting. Were there any other things that you have experienced?
I typically get phone interference, and a lot of times it's either when my sister or my mom and I are talking. We'll literally hear people talking with us on the same. They will both be like, "Do you hear that? Who's talking?" So that'll happen. Bill and I were doing an interview with who was it?
Jeff Pritchett.
Jeff Pritchett, and every time I talked, there was a man talking along with me. That kind of stuff has happened to me.
Yeah.
I know. It's freaky. It's just freaky.
And Steve, there were 4 of us on that call that night. And
right.
The other 3 of us, when we spoke, you didn't hear that. Every time Jackie spoke, there was a shadow voice in the background that was running all kinds of weird interference. It was really bizarre.
I hope they didn't say wake up number 27.
No.
Yeah, there was another interview that I was giving, or I was a part of as well, Steve, back maybe 6-8 months ago. And at one point, maybe 10, 15 minutes in the interview, I got booted off. And I was actually kind of being fed information over Facebook Messenger by Andy Colvin. He was kind of feeding me things because we were talking about some of his research on the show. And he's like, well, don't forget to tell him this. And then there was that and blah, blah, blah. And then boom, he said, well, I've been kicked off of almost every show I've ever been on. So this is just another one for you. So that was kind of a weird, sensitive interference. But I also wanted to kind of couple my own only real paranormal experiences that I think that I have been involved with. And again, I want to qualify this with stating that I was in a position of pretty extreme psychological turmoil when this happened both times. But when I heard Amanda talking about shadow people and then you kind of underscoring that, Steve, I was thinking about a couple instances that I had in the middle of the night where I had the only way I can really describe it is there was a spiritual blackness that seemed to be kind of coming over me. It caused an unbelievable sense of dread. And I just felt totally lost. And I remember the first time it happened, I called a buddy of mine in the middle of the night and I'm like, dude, there's demons in my apartment. I need to get out of here. He's like, what are you calling me for? It's 3:00 in the morning. And he hung up. But then I called another friend and he talked me down off the ledge, so to speak. And again, this happened about a year later where I had that same sense of foreboding. This is all prior to doing any Keel research, to even watching the Mothman Prophecies movie. And I'm wondering sometimes if perhaps those 2 instances didn't really kind of drive my desire to know more about what Keel really has done a great job of highlighting and like you mentioned with the super spectrum. In a lot of ways, it seems that this phenomena manifests itself in the way that the experiencers have some type of frame of reference, or Keel like to use the word percipient, the way the percipient perceives it.
Okay, yes. And I wanted to go back to Amanda for a minute. In these experiences, have most of these experiences been in a single house, or do they tend to follow you where you are?
Oh no, it can be wherever, whenever.
You're just lucky, I guess. Okay.
Well, the house I grew up in, like I said, there was a lot of activity. Like I'd come home from school, I hear my brother in his room upstairs. Yeah, I'm watching TV. I hear my brother in his room upstairs above me, walking around, playing his guitar. And then he comes home.
Oh boy.
Oh, it turned out I was alone in the house that entire time. Oh my
But
goodness.
you seem like you have you're able to deal with it. I might be in the next county, living in a tent. I don't know.
Well, like I said, it was kind of all I knew, and if I did try to talk to people about it, they're like Jackie said, oh, it's not, your eyes are playing tricks. It's all in your head. Like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not. No, I heard, I heard what I heard.
Tell
Um,
tell us a little more about the shadow things you're seeing. I know even George Norrie has talked about a lot. I've heard a lot of people talk about seeing. They're not even that not clear, but it's almost like it's some kind of a critter, and it's not a classic shadow person or anything like that. But of course, Whitley Strieber would tell us some real horror stories about these gigantic shadow spiders on the ceiling of his room, which I hope never to anybody encounters. But have you ever been able to get a good look at some of these, whatever they are, manifestations or apparitions?
yeah. So as long as I can remember, have had sleep paralysis, and so I'm of the mind that there are two kinds of sleep paralysis, and people are not talking about the same thing when they talk about.
Exactly.
I have experienced the one where kind of your brain wakes up before your body does, and you're kind of stuck, and it's unnerving, but it's not like mortally terrifying. Um, and I've had both. So from a very young age, I've had the one where you're just asleep, you're happily dreaming about My Little Ponies, and then all of a sudden you're stuck, like something's pinning you down, and just this dread comes over you, and it feels like something is literally disintegrating your soul. Best way I can describe it. And that's happened my entire life. I never know when it's going to happen. It's like I had real sleep issues for a while because of it, but it's gotten better now. Anyway,
Okay.
that usually. So I was having one of those episodes one night, not too long ago. Actually, it was just a couple years ago, where I felt the paralysis coming on, and usually I can't prevent it if I feel it coming. But this particular time, I was like, oh, blank, no. I don't know if I can swear on your podcast. I was like, oh, blank.
I think they frown on it, but we get your drift.
And I kind of just bucked myself awake, like physically kind of jolted up,
Okay.
and my eyes are open, and there's this three-dimensional shadow coming up the bed towards me, and when I sat up, it stopped in its tracks, kind of. And I'm just staring at it, and I'm thinking, am I awake or am I asleep? Am I awake or asleep? I'm doing the tests, like you touch your thumb to all of your other four fingers to make sure you're awake.
Right.
I'm around the room, like, okay, I'm very much awake right now. And it's like this thing wasn't expecting me to wake up and see it, and it just stopped. And then after a moment or so, it starts backing up away from me, and it just kind of dissipates. And well, I did sleep for probably about a week after that. But that is the most extreme thing I've experienced, I think.
I guess I might be happy with not being too well tuned into the super
Yeah,
spectrum.
yeah. Sometimes it's cool. Sometimes I just rather not.
My wife is sensitive, and she has seen a full bodied apparition, and she picks up stuff sometimes. But I had that one experience where I had, and I think I probably told you guys this, but I went to the TNT area one night, came back into my motel room, and the TV set turned on by itself and started flipping through channels. And the thought was, no, this has not happened to me. I'm a non-experiencer. Write that down, please. But
That would
go ahead.
That was the house I grew up in too. I'd turn off the TV upstairs, start to go downstairs, the TV would turn right back on, but this time it would turn on to the religious channel, like the Christian channel. I was watching cartoons, so I was not on that channel. Turn the TV off. It just comes back on the religious channel. I turn it off, start to go back downstairs. It turns on again. I'm like, okay, no, this is not normal.
Huh. Okay. Very strange. And actually, it turned out that in this particular room of that hotel, the room all in this one corner, there were really strange things going on with television sets with different people over several years. But that's another story. Jackie, now you said you're kind of sensitive to geomagnetic energies.
Yeah, crystals especially.
Okay.
Vortices and crystals.
I just wondered if it would be connected anyway. When you went to the Serpent Mound in Ohio, which is a really amazing place, did you pick up any kind of vibe there? Did you any kind of energy or whatever?
Not anything that I can really remember. So it wasn't like anything like really super strong like some of the experiences I've had. It felt more eerie to me than anything. I don't think I would have wanted to walk around the Serpent Mound by myself.
Okay, I just wondered, do you go into places, houses, regions, or whatever sometimes and get, and for lack of a better word, some kind of vibe or pick up emotions or anything like that?
Yes, I do that. I feel that a lot. As a matter of fact, when we were in Point Pleasant, we drove to Charleston, and there's a vortex area in North Charleston, and I knew when we were in it. I knew we were in it. Bill and Amanda had mentioned, "Do you think that this is the place?" And I said, "This is definitely the place. I can feel it." And it wasn't long after that they were both feeling it too. So, and in Sedona in a crystal shop, I could not stay in that crystal shop. Bill was talking to a nice woman there, and I left. And I went back to get him, and he was still talking away. And it's like, I can't stay in here. I literally felt like I had this vibration in my hands, and it can go up my arms. And I've been getting it in my feet lately to the point where I've been to neurologists and everything else, and they've tested so many things on me trying to figure out what's causing this. I don't have any type of neurological problem. It's just a vibration, and it can get really super strong, and it can back off. And I get ringing in my ears, and it'll back off. And usually when the ringing starts, something's going on that's affecting me, and I don't find out until later. The same with the vibrations. If I go into a deep state of meditation, I literally could connect with dead people and other things like that. So it can be really fun in my world sometimes.
Yes, dead people. I have an off-the-wall question. This is for what about you, Amanda? Do you hear voices from beyond ever, or is that something you experience?
Voices from beyond.
Well, however you want to put it,
Well,
dead people or
no,
or
I heard
okay.
my mother calling me, and she's still alive. Like my mom will be trying to reach me and not be able to get through to me. But I will hear her say my name, and I know I need to get to a phone right then.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, that's a little different, I guess. But not voices so much. But I feel like I'm rather connected to some guides or something along that line. That intuition. It's more intuitive stuff, I think.
And do you pick up any kind of energies or sensitive like Jackie is in particular areas?
Not particularly.
What about?
That's really
I
Jackie's.
don't mean to cut you guys off.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Remember when you came into our room in Point Pleasant and Jackie had her crystals out, and you walked up and the two of you were all picking up on this vibe, and I'm like, what the heck are you guys talking about? And you said to me, you're not feeling that? You remember that?
The room, there's all these crystals. I got all giddy. I started shrieking. It kind of like scrambled my insides. It felt strange, but so yeah, I guess I do that. Again, it's this all normal to me, so I don't even realize it.
Okay, now, so both of you, now I know you had some kind of an experience in the TNT last time you were there, right? But what, when you guys, well, especially for you, Amanda, who had been there the first time this time, but Jackie, you of course had your first time. What was it like going to the TNT area the first time? Anything spectacular or interesting?
Well, for me, my first time in the TNT area, like the very first time we went, it was the night that we got into town. It was probably about midnight, pitch black, and we're driving down Camp Conley Road,
Right.
listening to Mothman Prophecies on audiobook.
Oh, great.
It was perfect. I took some video of it, and yeah, it just set the tone for the whole trip for me.
Just out of curiosity, do you remember what passage you were listening to at the time?
It was the very beginning.
Double
yes. To Point Pleasant or whatever that was.
Just a very tired John Keel catching a whale of a cold.
Yes.
What a great book. I mention this all the time, but Colin Wilson, who's somebody you guys have got to read if you haven't already, said of John Keel that he was incapable of writing a dull sentence. And he's written a book called Alien Dawn, where he talks about his correspondence with John Keel. It's fascinating. And he's also written a book called Mysteries. And in that book, they're divided into chapters, so you don't have to read it from cover to cover. But there's a chapter that's something about mysteries of time and space or something like that. He takes the work of John Keel, T.C. Lethbridge, the famous dowser, Ted Holliday, who came to believe that Loch Ness, that Nessie was probably some kind of a psychic projection. And he weaves all these ideas together with John Keel, and it's just fascinating. But let's see, was there anything else you wanted to talk about of the experience in the TNT that you had this last trip?
I would like to say that for the record, Amanda did turn to me on video and say, I didn't think I'd be this freaked out. It was pretty cute.
We went daylight and went into the igloos, and even at noon, the igloos are so dark.
Yes.
There's not a spot of light in there. So I was kind of freaked out.
How much time do we have left, Steve?
We can go a little while longer. There's no set time.
The reason I'm asking is because I just wanted to ask the ladies here. We had a couple of other experiences that weren't directly in the TNT area, but as a result of a couple of what I like to call double-blind ghost box sessions. Do we want to go into that?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Jackie, I mean, your thoughts?
I'm not sure exactly what all we're going to talk about. I mean,
where did you use the ghost box?
Okay, so Amanda and I did a session in the hotel, in her hotel room, our first full day there. And then we also took a trip to Parkersburg and did one there. And we did one at Two Endy Way Park. And we did one in
North Charleston.
North Charleston.
And we got some bizarre input, some really bizarre input. Now, I know you guys did the first one in the hotel room, if I remember correctly, and I wasn't able to be present for the one in Parkersburg, but can you guys share a little bit about those two sessions? And the reason, Steve, that they went to Parkersburg, of course, is because our old friend, the legendary Woodrow Derenberger, that's where he had his encounter initially with Indrid Cold, and there are some numerological aspects of why they went to the particular place that they went to. You guys want to share on that?
Well, we're currently doing an investigation, so I don't know how much information we want to give up, but before we left for Point Pleasant, Amanda had gone to an area near O'Hare Airport and did the same session with her cousin. And through that session, we got information that led Amanda and I to Parkersburg. That will be reviewed later, but we have like all of these synchronicities that are lining up, and each time we're getting more information that's sending us on, and through more and more and more stuff. And I can just give a small sample of one of the weird things that came out of it. I was the one that had on the blindfold and the noise canceling headphones at 2ND Way, and Bill and Amanda were asking the questions. And I don't know exactly what was said. I don't have that in front of me, so I can't say exactly, but they asked, different questions.
But at the time you heard nothing.
Right.
Okay.
I can't hear the questions. Bill had asked this I do know. Bill had asked if Carolyn is still here, Carolyn Harris. And I responded by saying in love. That was really pretty cool. I think it brought tears to our eyes, both of us, when we heard, when I heard it back and when I said it to him. That was his first experience ever being, in a double-blind ghost box session.
Right.
And then another thing that came up was Lily. So later on, we're back at 2ND Way, and it's dark outside, and there's a sign, something about Lily and somebody. And we're like, well, Lily came up. What was that? Well, if you look at Mothman Prophecy, Lily is all over. That's the house where on Camp Conley Road, the Lilies, where they watch the UFOs. So we just got all kinds of leads to we're trying to really dig into all of this, and we will be back in West Virginia
soon.
Excellent.
Yes, soon.
Well, that would it'd be great if sometime we can all congregate there again sometime, and I will.
Awesome.
I will let you guys. Sometimes we never know when it's going to happen, but we've been down there in the winter months too, but we'll definitely let you know if something comes up. But it would definitely be fun to get together again. Let's see. I think we're probably should wind down pretty soon. But what just kind of go around and I guess since we've been talking so much about Mothman and John Keel's research and the doors that he really opened. I mean, people that know me that I know I've told some people this, and I mentioned it on the show before. There's a friend of mine that says that he counts the minutes down on whatever show I'm doing, even if it's not about Mothman or Keel, as to how soon I mentioned John Keel. And he said it would make a great drinking game for every time John Keel's mentioned, somebody tips one. But let's just go around all three of you. What with this journey. In relation to John Keel and his research and and what he discovered and experienced, what does it mean to all three of you? Any one of you can start. What ideas has it brought to you?
I can start out here.
Okay.
To me, it's much more than just Point Pleasant and the events that happened in 1966, 1967. Whatever was going on there and whatever he started to uncover, I think it applies everywhere to just this planet that we live on, this space that we live in. And so really wherever we go, we're finding threads where we're not really expecting to find them. All roads lead to John Keel, I guess.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, there you go. There's your soundbite. But yeah, to me, it's not just about this one Mothman case, this one phenomena. It's kind of all-encompassing. We can apply what we learned from Keel and this experience to pretty much any phenomenon you can think of.
And I've heard some researchers in person and some in print talk about the contribution that Keel made. Before I get to Jackie, when I attended that MUFON symposium in '76, I was a convert to the Church of John Keel, man. I was genuflexing and everything, and boy, that's all I would talk about. And you could see these people look at me like, I don't want to hear this. It's ET. What the same way that you've got an insurance salesman over at your house at about 10 p.m. and you want him to leave. They didn't want me to stick around, I don't think, but that's all I could talk about. But Jackie, what about you? What is it? What has it meant for you, John Keel's research?
I'm not sure how I want to say this. It makes me feel like I'm not crazy because like growing up and you have these weird things happening in your life and thinking things are the way it's just the way it is. This is our life and this is just the way it is. And then you're having these weird things happening as an adult and people talking on the phone when you're talking on the phone, I mean, that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, so why does it always happen to me? Well, my sister is very opposite of me and she always justifies everything. And she's like, well, it does happen to everyone. You're not special, that kind of stuff. It doesn't happen to everyone, and just like the Bigfoot I think it was Bigfoot that we saw. She said it was Harold Deal's dad. I mean, some guy that grew up out in that area, which, this thing was monstrous. So I think for me, it puts perspective on my entire life. It makes me feel like I'm not the crazy one. And I like to think that he opened my mind up even further to the possibility that the veil is being lifted, that there truly is a veil and it is being lifted.
And isn't it great that so many of his writings now, there was a time when he was kind of being forgotten. The Mothman Prophecies was being reprinted, but a lot of his stuff was kind of going into obscurity, and people were forgetting his name. I never did. But yes, it's just great to have kind of a resurgence and so many people benefiting from his research. Bill, how about you?
Gosh, I've been thinking about this and I've been trying to toss around some kind of profound statement to toss out there because I just like to do stuff like that. But, I guess looking back in the way that my interest in the Mothman Prophecies movie led to my interest in John Keel's work, the Mothman Prophecies, which led to all the different research that I've been able to do since that point, and then having this conversation among the four of us right now. I think that Keel, the way that interest in the Mothman Prophecies movie led to my interest in John Keel's work, the Mothman Prophecies, which led to all the different research that I've been able to do since that point, and then having this conversation among the four of us right now. I think that Keel touches on the psychological, he touches on the philosophical, the wonder. I've always considered myself, in the way I like to describe me to other people, is I'm just a fascinated human being. John Keel opened up that sense of wonder for me to be able to investigate things that were outside of everyday walk, and to be able to realize, like Jackie said, that there's just so much more that's out there. And I guess to summarize, I think one of my favorite statements I've heard by Keel is actually on the back of one of the T-shirts that Jackie got from our first visit to the Mothman Museum. She has two of them. She's holding up two fingers now. And that is that the universe does not exist as we think it does. We do not exist as we think we do. And it just really underscores my belief that we are spiritual beings having a human experience rather than human beings having occasional spiritual experiences. If any of that makes sense, that's cool. If it doesn't, sorry, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
It makes perfect sense. And I remember there was a great publication years ago called Magonia from the UK, run by John Rimmer. And I remember him writing one time that if you read between the lines, John Keel is saying that, at least partially, that the phenomena is psychological. And it's certainly, whatever it is, it does hit us in that manner. It does, and that's why what you're doing with your doctorate is going to be so fascinating, is because regardless of how physical or non-physical it is, ultimately it deals with people and how they react to it. And remember how you talked about your sense of wonder. Keel talks about his childish sense of wonder has never waned toward the end of the Mothman Prophecies. Well, thank you all so much. Amanda and Jackie, thank you for being here as guests tonight. It was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And we will definitely have to do this again. Next time we'll just call it a roundtable, I guess. And Bill, thank you for being here as co-host. This was absolutely fantastic.
Steve, I appreciate it. And before we let you go, Amanda's got a website address for you.
Oh, yes, that's right. I want all of you, if you have any contact information or whatever, please feel free to do it now. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yes. Anyone can reach us at Phenomenology Research Partners.com. It's got a little bit about us, about Jackie, Bill, and I, and it's our mission statement, some little bios and contact information. There's a blog as well, so people can check back and keep up on our adventures.
Well, excellent. And thank you all again. And everybody, please sit tight. I'm going to do my closeout, and then I'd like to talk to everybody for a few minutes. But if there's any last minute things anybody would like to say, feel free. Are we good?
We're good.
Okay. All right. Sit tight for just a moment. Again, thank all of you. The High Strangeness Factor was created by Steve Ward and Andy Mercer and is copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I want to thank our fearless leaders here at the network, Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson. I also want to thank Andy Mercer in his capacity as producer for the show and Brian Zeller for composing the great original music for the theme for the High Strangeness Factor. Brian also is my unofficial ombudsman, whether I ask him to or not. I can also be heard on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files as a correspondent weekly on this same network. And I also have a Facebook page now that called the Phantom Menagerie that you can check out on Facebook. And I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank here on Paranormal UK Radio. Thank you for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.